Normally on Fridays, we have Classic Tabletop RPG Friday. And that's when we get deep, very deep, into a classic tabletop RPG, which here we define that as a game that's 20 years old or older. And we really get down to the nitty gritty, getting into the mechanics, going through it step by step, y'all, on how games back in the day were made and how they were played. And I have a whole video explaining why I cover the classics. Friday is like a standing appointment with me. You know, we always know that's where we're going on Fridays, except today. Today, I'm going to pivot again. And I only pivot when I feel I have something to give you that I believe is really going to help you in some way, shape, or form. And since we talk about tabletop RPGs on this channel, it's going to be in relation to that, though it might have a wider application. I'm going to change the subject today and flip the script on you, and we are going to put our Dark Conspiracy RPG series on hold temporarily until we get done with today's video. Now, because of that, and because I'm doing this in last minute, it's going to be little to no editing because I just really want you to get to the meat of what I'm talking about today. So it's probably better for you to listen rather than just watch me, because there's not going to be a whole lot going on in that department. Just some light edits and some other things, but I really think that this is going to explain a lot of things of why RPG Elite exists, what RPG Elite stands for, who RPG Elites are. It just really dives into answering those questions. On the other side, as always, I got a question of the vid for you, so make sure you stick to the end. I want to talk about 3 things that separate an RPG Elite from the general tabletop RPG community in how they look at tabletop RPGs. And again, this is explaining RPG Elites. This is not advocating for everybody to be one. You only need to pursue being an RPG Elite if that is what you feel motivated to do. But not easy on a couple different levels. And in general, you are going to set yourself apart and aside from the general community. And a lot of people don't like that. They like to be I need to be in and part of something right now, so I will settle. Well, RPG Elites don't settle. So again, if this is something that you can handle, or you're just maybe looking for something, maybe you'll just get a nugget or two out of this. But it will explain how us RPG Elites, how we look at tabletop RPGs. So let's roll that transition. Those of you who've been coming to the channel for a while, you guys know I have a tagline that explains what RPG Elite does here on this channel. And at the end of that tagline, I say, to make your tabletop RPG experience more immersive and enjoyable. However, there is a third kind of underpinning element that I have mentioned in passing or in a semi-direct way. And so I'm going to change that tagline because I believe that we need to say this, because this is how an RPG Elite is going to think about a tabletop RPG. That is to be more meaningful in our tabletop RPG sessions. And so the new tagline is going to be to make your tabletop RPG experience more immersive, enjoyable, and meaningful. Because this is the mindset of an RPG Elite. We are going to approach a tabletop RPG with those 3 things in mind: what's enjoyable, what's meaningful, what's immersive. Those 3 things are really what encapsulates the approach of an RPG Elite. And that is why we cover those things that can potentially make your sessions fall into all 3 of those categories concurrently. We want our tabletop RPG sessions to be more meaningful, to have more substance, to go beyond just kind of like little surface things. And we're going to talk about this in a second. So that's the first thing in terms of how an RPG Elite approaches a tabletop RPG. We approach it for it to be more meaningful in our session. The second one is that an RPG Elite will approach a tabletop RPG not as just a game. Now we realize, yes, it is a game, but it's not just the game. It's like the Lord of the Rings trilogy. They're not just books. They're more than just books on kind of various different levels. I don't think anybody who, knows anything about anything is going to argue against that. They're more than just books. They're even more than just entertainment. And most stories are. So we don't approach it as just a game, but we approach tabletop RPGs as an art form. So that's the second difference that an RPG Elite has from kind of the general tabletop RPG community. Most people in the tabletop RPG community approach a tabletop RPG as a game, which is fine. But it's more than just a game to an RPG Elite. It is an art form. And that means it is a means of expression and creativity. And that is how we approach it. It's an art form to us. It's kind of like the redheaded not kinda, it is the redheaded stepchild of art form. For example, it steals from other art forms like other art forms do all of the time. It rides on the backs of other art forms. Say, for example, you have the tabletop RPG Blade Runner. Okay, well, that is from a film, another art form. You have Star Trek. All right, well, that is from another art form, a television series. You have Marvel and DC Heroes, and that is from comic books. And then you have something like Dune, and that is from novels. That, for us, is extremely important. Because now, it's not just us just playing a game and rolling some dice and and that's happening, sure. But for an RPG Elite, we're approaching this with a different mindset, RPG Elite philosophy mindset. It's going to be a different expectation and a different desire and a different approach when we sit down at the table. How I came to the decision to make this video today is because I'm out walking my dog, and anytime I'm out walking my dog, because I walk all the time, I try to get in anywhere between 6,000 to 10,000 steps a day. 6 would be the bare minimum. I try to average it out at about 8,000 steps. I already got my steps in today. But when I'm out and I'm walking, I'm listening to something. And I'm either listening to a podcast or, a video, or I'm listening to an audiobook, or I'm listening to a biblical teaching. I'm listening to one of those three things all of the time. And this morning, I'm out, I'm listening to these two podcast videos that I have in my watch list, because I have like over 100 of them, and I always keep adding on to it. So I'm always has something as far as YouTube goes. So I'm listening to these two, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so good. It's saying so much. And folks, I'm just scratching the surface on this stuff today. I really am. But this third point really encapsulates how a tabletop RPG is approached from an RPG Elite's perspective. This really nails it. He just says this a different way. So I'm going to play two clips for you from the same video that I was listening to. Just nails it. And then if you want to go and watch the whole thing, if I remember, I'll go ahead and put that link down in the description. So let's go ahead and let's do this clip and listen to what this guy says. And then I'll come back and I'll explain some things from an RPG Elite perspective.
What's the difference between story and information?
Information allows us to construct a lens for seeing the world. Story allows us to experience the world. Information is processed in a certain part of our brain that deals with logic. Story is processed in a part of our brain that deals with emotions, with feelings.
Folks, that is it at the end of the day. Information versus story. Those of you who know anything about the RPG Elite philosophy know that RPG Elite quality number 8, it is about the story. It's about the story for an RPG Elite. It's not just giving characters or players information. There's too much here. There's too much here. But let's look at those two things that he said. So he talked about seeing versus experiencing, and that logic versus emotion. An RPG Elite is going to focus on story. So that means they're going to be focusing more on experience. The tagline that I use here, immersive, alludes to experience. It's not just data. No, I want you to be drawn into your tabletop RPG sessions. I want you to experience that. And then there's the logic and emotion. And when it comes to an RPG Elite, the logic side of our role-playing, right? There's only one kind of logic side to it, and I shouldn't say that because there actually are a couple, but one major part, which would be low-level role-playing. You're throwing the dice, and you're looking at tables, and you're calculating things. Those 3 levels of role-playing is how we approach the tabletop RPG. When we sit down at a session, that's all that the rolling of the dice is doing. It is interpreting how we're going to look at and express our medium and high level role playing. That's it. That's all. That's all it's for. So that's the only left part. So you're talking about, 2/3 of how we approach it is going to be in the right side type deal, in the right side of the brain type deal, not on the left side of the brain. Primarily, we're using our right side of the brain. We're using that emotion side of the brain. And that is going to be a problem for a lot of people who play tabletop RPGs, because let's just keep it 100. A lot of these people wouldn't know how to express their emotions in a mature and healthy setting of a tabletop RPG. They don't know how to disconnect themselves from character and, real life. I've seen this so many times. People be like, well, I'm just role playing. When they weren't role playing, good and well that they were taking it, personal because another character did something or whatever, all that stuff. That's just lying. You know the difference. I know the difference. I've been playing too long. I know the difference. And so it's because of this emotional immaturity that not only is in the tabletop RPG community, but just widespread in the culture itself. Oh, then, okay, well, that's why we have people who can't relate to one another. And that's why we don't have more immersive and enjoyable tabletop RPG experiences, because there's people who just emotionally are either immature or shallow. And they just like to stay in the safe place, the left brain place, because they open themselves up emotionally because they don't know how to do it, especially through character. Oh, well, it's all too foreign, like speaking a foreign language. I have no idea, no frame of reference of what's going on here. I'll just keep to this side. And that's why sessions are very banal. Sessions are very going nowhere, no direction, no depth. And RPG Elite just won't go in that direction. Let me give you this last one though, because this last clip, this one just nails it. I mean, this is the knocking it out of the park. Here it is.
Perhaps another way of looking at it is the fact that information is in the domain of things. Facts, figures, numbers. Stories are in the domain of people.
Ooh. Things versus people or characters. Tell me. An RPG Elite is looking for their characters to be characters, because It's about the story. Why make a character if it's not about the story? It's about the story. You need characters for a story. If it wasn't about the story in pretty much any tabletop RPG, to be quite honest, you should not make a character because you really wouldn't need it. All you would need is, you know, the GM to go ahead and just make a very nice setting, and you kind of meander and look at it and say ooh and ah with no characters. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It's about the story, and the story really is about the characters. It's about the characters. It's not about the things. It's how the characters are interpreting the things. So there is a connection there between the things and the characters, but the characters take precedent. And this is how an RPG Elite will approach a tabletop RPG. They approach it as story, not just information. Experience, not just seeing. Emotion, not just logic. And character, not just things. Now, again, I only had some bullet points today. You could see it. I didn't really have that much. I could talk about this. Oh my gosh. I could talk about this ad infinitum, ad nauseum on the Ferrilla. But I'm going to end this video today, and I'm going to put it in your ballpark because I want to hear from you. But before we get to the question of the vid, if you got any value out of this video, then do me a solid. Could you please, and could you go ahead and just crush that like button? Also, if you would like to stick around, maybe this is your first video of RPG Elite, then you can go ahead and do that. I come out with videos every Tuesday and Friday. And like I said, today's video was different from what is normally on here because I normally go deep dive, but I just had to get this out of my system. And I just, because I think it's going to help you guys, it's going to help you in your RPG, your tabletop RPG experience, making them more immersive, enjoyable, and meaningful. Meaningful. That last one is just so important. So if you want to stick around, go ahead, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and let's get to the question of the vid, which is really this. We're going on that last approach, that last mindset of an RPG Elite. So when you approach a tabletop RPG, are you one that approaches it more from an information perspective or more from a story perspective? I really am curious as to if you're more information and more story, and I'll throw in there, why? Is it just your personality? Just who you are? Because sometimes that is what absolutely disqualifies somebody from being an RPG Elite, which is fine. That's fine, folks. It's just that I'm going to be talking about RPG Elites and how they approach things here on this channel. And if you just watch the channel because you're just curious, great, man. I'm glad to have you. And sometimes that is what eliminates people. It's just not them. It's just not them and who they are. But sometimes it's not that, because they get it mixed up with, oh, it's who I am, but it's only who you are because you keep hiding in a shell and you won't come out of it. And that's not who you are. That's just being a coward. But that's, again, that's on another level. That's on another video. Gosh, there's so much. Man, I'm thinking about this stuff. There's so much to talk about. Oh gosh, 2 videos a week. If I had a team or something, man, we would just be killing it with way more videos. All right, well, that's it for me, folks. That will do it. So that means it's time for me to do my snaggle puss.
So exit, stage left.
It's the weekend, y'all, and if you have a game this weekend, happy gaming. I pray it's an RPG Elite session. What's an RPG Elite session? Come on now, I've said it a couple times. One that's more enjoyable, one that's more immersive, and one that's more, new one, meaningful. Yes. So until next time, folks, your boy Servant is out. Peace. 5,000 leaks. Your boy is down.